Okay, I think we can get started now, Jeffrey.
All right. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 CCDEH Training Series. My name is Jeff Lamore, and I am the current president of CCDEH. The training series was developed by CCDEH's Professional Development Committee to make up for the cancellation of this year's CEHA conference. Each session will be recorded, and CEUs will be available to all. The fee for each session is $25. You can also go on to CCDEH's video library. Tim will take us to the video library. You can go to the video library, and there are other recorded sessions that you could use to broaden your knowledge with regards to environmental health, as well as obtain additional CEUs. So in order to obtain your CEUs, you must complete and submit the evaluation form at the end of each session. Tim will show that. There we go. Please make sure you enter your full name and email address. The next session for this training series is scheduled for Thursday, April 15th. And also at the conclusion of the training series, the certificates will be issued on or before June 7th. There will be a question and answer. There will be a question and answer period at the end of today's training session. Tim will take us there. Please use the Q&A function to submit your questions. I'd like to thank Justin Milan, Cheryl Baldwin, Tim Snelling, and Freddie Adrian for their work on developing this training series. And with that, our first session today, our training series, is the professional development session. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Joshua Dugas. He's the Assistant Director for San Bernardino County Department of Public Health. With that, I will go ahead and transition over to Josh. Freddie, how are you? My apologies, I jumped in on you.
Oh, that's okay. That was great. Thank you.
Anything you want to add, Freddie?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all for putting this together, and thank you, Josh, for agreeing to do this. We really do appreciate that. I also want to add that, Josh is currently the Assistant Director for Public Health in San Bernardino. Not only that, Josh is really one of us. He started, from being a trainee all the way to being Assistant Director of Public Health. So we look forward to his presentation, and I think it's going to be great. Thank you, Josh.
And just to add to that, with real quick, Freddie is our chair for the Professional Development Committee, and this is Freddie's doing to put this training series together. So thank you, Freddie, again for putting that together. And with that, we'll go ahead and turn it over to Josh.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Freddie and Jeff, and everyone for having me. I really appreciate it. Hopefully, you'll get something out of this. It feels kind of strange giving this presentation to some people in this group, as I've learned so much from CCDEH and many of the past and present members. So without them, I probably wouldn't be in this position to give this presentation. So I guess I should throw out a thank you to them before we get started. With that, Freddie and Jeff alluded to, I'm the Assistant Director of San Bernardino County right now. Just to kind of give you an idea of how our structure works, environmental health is part of the Public Health Department, and I oversee the Division Chief for Environmental Health, amongst other things. So, I'm lucky to still be involved in environmental health. You can see I have a bachelor's degree in an MBA, and, like Freddie said, I started my career in environmental health, so this is like coming home. So I'm really happy to be here. I started, way too long ago as a REHS trainee here in San Bernardino, and I've had my whole career here. You can see, obviously, this is the same progression most people take, but I worked my way through, became the division chief, and then I had a few other opportunities that came my way, one including being the chief financial officer for a couple of years, and now I'm in the role of assistant director. So though I've technically left environmental health, it's always at my heart, and I get to still be involved, and that makes me really happy. I really enjoy a lot of the aspects of environmental health. I oversee a lot of divisions, very broad, everything from clinics to our preparedness response, and like I said, environmental health. So I get to work with agency management on lots of different topics pretty much all the time. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in, and I think when it comes to the title of the presentation and working with agency management, I think the first and most important thing that that you can do is determine what agency management actually means to you. So in any given day, based on our structure, I can work with directly with members of our Board of Supervisors, County Administrative Office, Health and Human Services, and Public Health. Our technical agency management would be our Health and Human Services division. But as you can see, I have lots of people that I work with directly, and they're all my bosses, and they're all management. So it's key to know who you're working with at all times. Then you can see here, I just included this on the right to show how environmental health comes up through me. Let's start with the basics in working with, well, not just agency management, but in general. Most people on this call are obviously looking to further their careers or are at a level that is pretty advanced. This may go as common sense, but if you do your job and hold your staff accountable, that's the basics. If you don't do that, you're going to have a hard time working with anyone, I think. So I would encourage you to, at minimum, do this part. One thing that my agency management expects of me, and I'm assuming everyone else's does too, 3 pretty basic things that can make your life a little bit easier is monitor your productivity. In environmental health, let's just say with inspections, at least we kind of know for the most part how many we have, how many staff we have. We can set goals and try to get those accomplished. Accountability, that's never a fun word, but I feel that that's one thing that's helped me be successful over time is setting clear expectations for my staff and asking my boss to set clear expectations for me as well. And then from those clear expectations, ensuring that I hold myself accountable and I hold my staff accountable to meeting them, whether it be completing a district regarding inspections or conducting plan check, whatever it may be, focusing on accomplishing what we're expected to accomplish is key. And, I had a really wonderful division chief when I first started. And some of you may have remember Dana Vera, but when we started leadership trainings in San Bernardino County, one of the things he focused on over and over again, he said, nothing else matters if you can't maintain your budget. And having been in the program realm in environmental health, being the chief financial officer for all of public health for a while, and now my role as assistant director, if your money's not right, then you're probably going to have a tough time getting anything done. I won't go into the fact that I know none of us have enough of it and we could always use more staff, but this is a key factor in setting the foundation to working with your management. These are some of my keys to success is I establish and foster working relationships with everyone I can, but especially with my management. I try to foster a relationship that allows for open communication and building trust. The relationships are actually key. They're not developed overnight, and I try to set a long-term level of trust in me to where when things are going wrong, which they inevitably will, I have enough trust to be able to garner some leeway, and it allows me to work through issues a lot easier. Learn about the perspectives that affect your workplace culture. What does success mean for your supervisor versus an employee? Again, this goes back to setting expectations, but one thing that has helped me in my interactions with my management is that on a regular basis, not just on my annual work performance evaluations, I try to bring up this conversation of what are your expectations for me? What are your priorities? What are you expecting me to get done? So that I know what success looks like for me, but I also try to relay this to my staff. I think this is super key when not only working with your staff for sure, but with working with my management, because there's many times that in a dynamic environment, especially with COVID, but environmental health is dynamic enough. Then you throw in COVID and whatever new initiatives thrown our way. The beautiful thing about environmental health is that if people don't know where to send it, they send it to us. If it has water in the title, it's going to probably start with us. And if it has food in the title, it's going to probably start with us. Keeps us busy with fun things to do, but it makes it challenging. So what I regularly do is talk to my boss or bosses in some cases about, here's what I'm working on. Is this your priorities? And many times there's tweaks to that because life is ever changing. And I'm assuming everyone in this meeting works hard all day, but there's nothing more frustrating than working really hard on the project when goals, objectives, or the mission has changed and you may be kind of spinning your wheels. So setting clear expectations is key. So I kind of jumped into the third bullet, but it's a lot easier to be successful when you know what you're supposed to be doing. So set expectations both up and down and receive expectations. I also set expectations with my bosses. I'm not rude or inconsiderate or anything like that, and I don't direct my bosses. But what I mean by setting expectations with my bosses is that I keep them informed of what environmental health, in this case, let's just use that as an example, is capable of doing. So if there's a request to do something more, I can say, well, I just need you to understand these are the staff we have, these are the resources we have, and this is what we can get done. So moving forward, do we either A, reprioritize other duties, or do we want to consider bringing in more resources? I talked a little bit about this earlier, but understanding your organizational chart and your culture is key. So I've had the privilege of working for multiple bosses and had at multiple levels. And some of my bosses have been 100% okay with me working, say, directly with representatives of our board of supervisors. Others have wanted me to run those, run everything through them prior to communicating with the board of supervisors. In both ways is fine, but knowing that expectation in your culture and what is acceptable is key. There's nothing worse than, I shouldn't say there's nothing worse, but one challenge I have is when people jump chain of command and I'm not aware of it and something comes from the top down and I can't speak to it, it's very challenging for me to gain credibility on issues right off the bat. And it's also challenging moving forward. So just make sure you know what your chain of command is and know what's acceptable and what isn't acceptable. And, I'll just say this up front, a lot of the topics I'm going to be talking about, we'll circle back to the kind of the same thing over and over, but understanding the priorities of your boss and the organization is key. I'm assuming, at least in San Bernardino County, I should say, we have a mission and vision at the environmental health level. We have one at the public health level. We have one at the HS level. And most importantly, we have one at the county level. So making sure that what you're doing and how you're guiding your organization is in alignment with those different missions and visions is very key. And most importantly, know what your boss wants. That makes your life so much easier. I've found that I've had wonderful bosses and challenging bosses and, the whole spectrum, but regardless of the personality or expectations, knowing what their expectations are makes my life so much easier. And I put this up here on the right. This is a book I really like. I don't know if you know who Hal Moore is, but he was, if you've seen We Were Soldiers, he was the person who commanded the troops in that battle shown in that movie. But he was also had a very prolonged and exemplary career in the military. And there's this book, and it's very short and very simple, but it focuses on some key perspectives of leadership. So if you have some time, I would recommend you read it. But a couple of things that he focuses on there is be proactive and solve problems at the lowest level. I try always to not bring work to my boss and bosses. So to them, I may be the lowest level, and to you, that may be someone conducting inspections, or it may be one of your lead staff. But I try to empower myself and request the ability to be empowered. I never want to work outside of what's approved, but I try to solve as many problems as I can prior to bringing them up to management. Few keys to success: be flexible when working with management, and especially the higher it seems to go. The change is always coming. The only constant is change. And whatever cliche or wording you want to use, it's true. Many times, there's initiatives I get in the morning that may have changed dramatically by even the end of the day. So being flexible and being able to adapt not only yourself but your staff is key. Bring solutions. It's kind of like solving at the lowest level. I try to never go to my boss, and I would recommend you do this to the best of your ability with just problems. You may not have the solution and that you may need additional input, but coming with ideas and ways to resolve problems is is much better than just walking in and saying, you know, the sky is falling. I need a bunch of help, and tell me what to do. Create transparency. Again, it kind of all circles back to the same things, but what has really helped me is I'm very clear with my boss and bosses on what's going well, but more importantly, what's not going well. I try to be honest and as transparent as possible at all times so that it builds credibility, but it also doesn't lead to any surprises. If things are going bad, sometimes those are the most important things you need to communicate up. And you can see this last bullet here, I bolded it, communication. I feel if there's one thing you could take away from this, or one thing that's helped me to be successful, is communicating with both my bosses and my staff as much as possible. And one thing that works really well for me is something that we probably all learned in grade school, but is you know, the 5 W's, you know, who, what, where, when, why, and you can throw how in there too. But when I communicate, I try to follow or at least ensure that I answer all these questions when I'm talking with my bosses, so that my communication is complete and you know, it facilitates a quick conversation. So, you know, I'll kind of go through these a little bit, but that depends on your chain of command. Don't overreach. I know there's a tendency sometimes, especially when it feels like an emergency situation and things are going crazy, to email everyone or CC everyone, or, you know, I try to rein that in and take a step back and really evaluate who I need to include on emails. It's not that I ever want to hide anything from, you know, the county administrative office or anyone above my boss directly, but I also want to give my boss the opportunity to ask me questions, feel comfortable, try to work it through again at that lowest level within my organization. Then we expand it out, and at times it may need to expand out immediately depending on what the issue is. But just be cognizant prior to you know, blasting out an email or calling the CEO's office or you know, someone well over your boss's head, that may create a number of issues for you, and it may overcomplicate the issue because you know, as you go higher in your organization, their scope of control is very broad. So they may begin, which most bosses do, helping you to address whatever issue you may be bringing to them, but they may not have a significant amount of details, and it's not their fault, but that may cause confusion in trying to solve problems that may be able to be resolved at a lower level. What do you communicate? So I am a firm believer in over communication. I've had some bosses that it frustrates, some bosses like it. Again, it's an expectation I set, and if they want me to tone it down, I will, but I don't want them to ever feel surprised. You know, another wonderful boss that I had who was, you know, a very involved member of CCDEH was Terry Williams, for those of you who know her, but she preached to us over and over and over, please, no surprises. And you know what? It stuck with me forever, and it's made my life a lot easier. So, you know, easy ones on what to communicate are, you know, emergencies, HR, personnel issues. You know, there's certain things, if you have a harassment complaint, you have to communicate that immediately. You know, it's like actually against the law not to. You know, budget related, operational concerns. But I try to communicate even the smaller things that may not be big now that may become big. You know, in some of our programs in environmental health, especially, you know, let's take like our LEA or water programs, you know, water system regulation, you know, it's kind of almost like boiling a frog with some of those programs. It starts with something, maybe a minor, and it gets a little bit bigger and it gets a little bit bigger and it gets a little bit bigger. And then next thing you know, you're issuing cease and desist orders or possibly fining people. And I can promise you as a boss, and I can promise you my bosses at least, do not appreciate being brought into the loop at that point, because most of those operations, the first call they're going to make once they realize it's getting that severe is probably to your board of supervisors. So those calls are going to start coming from the top. And when I or my bosses are not aware of those issues, it kind of puts us behind the curve, saying, oh, yeah, we've been working on this for a year, but sorry, we didn't tell you about it. So again, it's in the how you communicate. You don't need to send an urgent message or, you know, run into your boss's office when these things are happening, but you use all the tools you have. It could be email, it could be regular meetings with your boss. It could be, I put together weekly kind of a summary report for my boss of just, high level bullet points that address some of the major issues and some of the possible issues in the department, so that at least when it happens, people can say like, okay, I'm aware of that, and I know we've been working on it, and this isn't a shock to me. And again, when I over communicate, that's just my style. But I also try to use this chart here on the right. You can just Google it. It's called an Eisenhower chart, but it kind of helps me to prioritize not just how I communicate, but my whole day, weeks, months, what projects I'm working on what priorities I have. And obviously, you can see here the upper left corner. That's stuff from a communication standpoint that goes directly to your boss. You probably shouldn't hesitate on many of that stuff. That's an email or a phone call or a text or whatever communication form your boss is comfortable with. You should probably get this stuff to them, and this will probably be elevated above your boss relatively quickly. And then you can kind of see through, you work through them, important, not urgent. Those are things we have to get done, but maybe you don't have to send an immediate update. You can update as progression's made. Not important, urgent. Yeah, we all get a lot of those. I get a lot of calls each day. I'm sure you do too. And then, Q4, I try to stay out of that one as much as I can, because those are things that just take away from the other important stuff that we may be working on. So COVID's made things a little unique, right? Look at this meeting, for example. I will be honest with you, I do not enjoy presenting on Zoom. I shouldn't say that. I prefer presenting in person, maybe frame it a little bit more positively, but I like seeing people, I like interacting with people, and we've all been there, but in this climate, virtual meetings seems to be the key. Some days I sit in front of my desk and I just jump from Zoom meeting to Zoom meeting, and though I'm talking to people all day, I don't feel that that connection. So where to communicate, also depends on the severity of the issue. So sometimes it can wait for a meeting, and you can relay the information, text, email. There's countless others. One thing I should have put on here that I really encourage my staff to do, and it's something that I'm always willing to do, is that pick up the phone. So this can also fall into probably a few other categories, but one thing I see a lot of times is I'll get brought into an email chain, like 20 emails deep, and you can tell that both parties are probably assuming tone and intent with the emails, because they get progressively shorter and more direct and even sometimes angry. And don't be afraid to just pick up the phone and call someone and say, hey, this can't wait, I need to talk to you. Or most importantly, look, I feel like we're emailing and texting back and forth and we're not getting resolution. Can I just chat with you real quick? And as things open up this year, hopefully we can go back to actually seeing each other in person. And the why to communicate, obviously it's no surprises. You don't want anyone above you to be shocked by something significant going on and being kind of hung out to dry, because we all have bosses. So if you leave your boss, if you hang him out to dry, his boss is going to call him, or her boss is going to call him, and so on and so forth. So we want to keep our bosses updated so that they don't have to get caught off guard. And the how, when I communicate, I literally just use the same format. I try to keep it as concise as possible with all pertinent facts. I try to make it as complete as possible, but I go back through and I make sure I address all of these topics: who, what, where, when, and why. It's kind of self-explanatory, but explain the problem, including all of these things, and tell them why it's important for them to know it. I think at times, especially in environmental health, I would get caught up because it's it's the same way probably everywhere. It's your world. It's all, you're in this every day, and it's easy to forget that maybe your boss isn't as up to speed on any given topic that we deal with on every day. Recently in San Bernardino County this week, I did a presentation to our board of supervisors regarding micro enterprise home kitchens, and I took the opportunity prior to the meeting to look back at my first draft of the presentation I presented, and then my last draft, And I realized in my first draft, I made a lot of assumptions of things that I, or probably we all know from being in environmental health, that the Board of Supervisors, there should be no expectation that they would know, because they're kind of nuances of the law. And obviously they're not reading every law that's passed every year. So when I communicated in that forum, I made sure to take a step back and focus on some of those things that are probably second nature to us, like time and temperature control, but help explain that so that they could have a better understanding and be better informed. Some additional tips. So I was actually talking to Freddie about this presentation, and I have to thank him for this recommendation, because one thing that I think is important to understand is politics, I shouldn't say are involved, they're always involved. It seems like no matter how innocuous a decision may seem, when it comes down to it, it's going to make someone happy and someone upset. And many times when we're working through a plan or a solution, or giving our bosses ways to resolve some of the things that are coming our way, we need to understand that politics are always involved. That's not to say that we always need to adjust to them immediately. I think that one of the things I love about environmental health is that not always, maybe not even most of the time, but our mission's pretty clear. We're here to enforce state law and help protect the public. And the interpretation of state law brings a little bit of challenges sometimes, but what it comes down to is, my initial proposals when I'm coming from an environmental health standpoint are usually pretty straightforward. Now, by the time it's all said and done, our approach, our fees, our forms, our outreach may change drastically in final format, but I try not to get frustrated with that, because I understand that at some level there's a reason for it. So I think I will throw this caveat out there for all the all of you on here. I can almost assure you that there's many times that your boss or you as a boss will be forced or requested, I'll use requested, to implement or oversee programs or rules or many different things that they or you may not be 100% in support of. And understand that a lot of that comes from the political beast that we are all involved in. So sometimes cut your boss some slack, and when you're put in that position to have to do the same thing, try not to get frustrated. I try not to, just understand that it's the nature of the game, and that it's just one more thing that we have to deal with. So when you're dealing with management, I think, to relate it back to the topic of this presentation, one thing I definitely try not to do is back to the flexibility piece. Is when something's coming down, and I have relationships with some people where I can ask them straight out, political deal here, yeah, and others I don't have the relationship, but I just try to adapt and move forward with those requested adjustments so that I don't become an impediment to the overall goal, which is to accomplish whatever objective we're working on. Additional tips, I think behind communication, this is probably one of the key things that has helped me be successful is own it. There is a wonderful book written by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. It's called Extreme Ownership. You can read that. They're military guys too. I swear I'm not a military buff, but it just happened to be, I think the military has excellent leadership examples, and it's a wonderful book. But they talk about extreme ownership, and what it basically comes down to is the fact that, to me at least, when something's given to me, it's mine until it's done. So I don't push issues up to my boss or down to my staff without trying to provide the resources for my staff to resolve it, or letting my boss know that I've done everything I pretty much can and requesting support in resolving it. But I never dump an issue until I can completely get rid of it. So if you own everything in your program, if you're a director, obviously that means everything. If you're a supervisor, that That may mean just your unit, and I don't mean just in a bad way, but just that one piece of environmental health. But whatever piece you have, own it, and make sure you take, as the next bullet points out, accountability for it. And accountability versus blame. I put this example on here. What do you do? If someone can't finish their work. Well, obviously you help them get the work done and you make sure the work is done. But when it comes down to it, when something goes wrong in my programs and my boss asks me about it, I don't ever say, supervisor X or employee Y or whoever didn't get it done. I just say we didn't get it done and it's my fault. And I go back and I figure out how to resolve it. If you could take that type of accountability and one saying I really like is, as a boss, you give credit and take blame. And I think when it comes down to it with my boss, I'm not going to try to tell him there's always reasons why things don't get done. And maybe it actually is one specific person's fault. But I also view it as my fault for not following up with that person to make sure that they were getting it done. So these couple things have helped me be very successful when I work with not just my management, but pretty much anyone. Here's another key. Make your boss's job easier. Again, this is something I've learned from a couple wonderful bosses I've had in environmental health in the past. One of the key aspects of my job is to make my boss's job easier, whether that's my direct boss or the board of supervisors or the public for that matter. My goal should be to make their life better and easier. And here's a few things that can help you accomplish that. So I try to be direct, primarily in email, especially in environmental health. Like I said, maybe it's an LEA issue or a water system issue. These things usually are very complex. There's multiple laws involved. There's multiple interpretations. You may have lawyers involved. It may have been going on for, years even sometimes. And, you want to put that all into an email. And in the past, I would end up with these like page or 2 page long emails. And I just realized that I wasn't getting the responses that I was hoping for because, our bosses are busy. And when I send them this long, email, they may not have the time or willingness sometimes even to read it all. So I've found really trying to focus on, the who, what, where, when, and why, keep it as brief as possible. And many times what I do in emails in particular is say, here's a quick summary. There's many more details involved in this and many more dates. If you would like additional detail, please let me know. And what it allows my boss to kind of figure out, okay, I don't really need to know that every date that everything that's happened every day in this last 2 years. I do know it started in 2018 and we're now, and there's been a long process. So being direct, and it kind of falls right into the next one. Value your boss's time. This is in how you communicate, but it's also in how you problem solve. There's many times where let's just take COVID, for example. I've been really involved in everything from setting up testing initially, contact tracing, and now in the vaccine distribution. And there's enough topics to where we could probably have an 8-hour meeting with the CEO and his office about all of these different topics. But we all realize that we're probably going to get 30 minutes to an hour, that's not to knock them. They're very responsive and willing whenever necessary. But the point is that we don't always have the luxury of having as much time with our boss as we want. So when I come in, this goes back to kind of being able to come with recommendations, come with solutions, coming with all of the information so that you can help get direction and make decisions very quickly so that you don't get bogged down or bog them down, having this long drawn out discussion. Have the discussions with your staff, come up with direction. You're the expert. Your staff are the experts. Get recommendations from them and then bring it to your boss, and hopefully it can move quickly. And be complete. This is probably one of the most frustrating things when it happens is that, working for me, the one thing I try to focus on is that I am 100% okay with mistakes as long as they were well thought out and as long as we don't keep making them. But I think there's a tendency, and I think it's human nature at times, to where people are afraid to give bad news. And unfortunately, as I've moved up throughout my career, I I seem to get less good news and more bad news the higher my position seems to go. And that's par for the course, because when there's an issue, who do they come to? They come to the bosses to help figure out how to resolve it. So as you're reporting to your bosses, agency management, whoever that may be, and also I would implore you to encourage your staff to come with all the information. The bad news is usually the most important part. And, you know, when it comes down to it, I look at it as, I love hearing good news just as much as everyone else, but when you get the bad news or the challenges, that's an opportunity for us to improve. And I think being able to focus on the, frame it as a positive, that when I get some challenging or bad news, it's an opportunity to make ourselves better. So encourage your staff to continue to bring that to you. When you go to meet with your staff, like I said, do your homework. Don't send work or questions to your boss, and do not create work for your boss whenever possible. And definitely try to anticipate questions. So this kind of goes back to the same topic. I included this quote here because it's kind of funny. But when it comes down to it, I think we've all been there probably with our staff, or maybe even I know I've been there, personally, where even at times when I'm prepared, but especially those that I'm not prepared for, I'll come in, I don't have a clear discussion path, so I'm probably taking up too much of my boss's time figuring out what I'm actually trying to ask him for. I didn't do enough homework, so he'll have a ton of questions for me, and I'm not capable of answering them. So then what does that do? Not only did I take up some of his time unnecessarily going in there that time, I get to go back and do the research I probably should have done in the first place, and go back and meet with him again and update him again on all of the things I should have probably known in the first place. So just be prepared. And, what I try to do is I try to leverage my staff's knowledge and perspective. And if I have something important that I'm bringing to my boss or much higher, like for example, when I presented on home kitchens this week, I actually showed the presentation to a number of staff, and this will go into kind of later for those of you who are just in environmental health department, but I have the luxury of having programs that have nothing to do with environmental health. And I kind of showed them the presentation and asked them, okay, what questions would you have if you saw this? So that I could prepare answers for those questions. And sure enough, 2 or 3 of the questions they identified for me were asked when I was on the board floor in front of the board of supervisors. So it was very beneficial. So if you are, and I don't say only in a bad way, because environmental health is, in my opinion, the most important program in all of the county. When you can leverage some of these relationships with other departments or other partners that you work with, and at times it's really great to bring in an outside perspective. And in environmental health, that may be as easy as, say, taking someone from hazmat and asking them to look at a food presentation, or vice versa. But getting an additional perspective prior to especially big presentations is something that's helped me be very successful. Common plan and solutions. Don't dump your problems or work on your boss's plate. I've had a few employees. I can't say that I've never done it. I try not to, but where I've had a couple, it kind of cracked me up, because everything that came to their desk would either go up or down. So they would either give it to one of their staffs, or the quote was, "It's too political, I'm giving it to you." And it just made me laugh. But when it comes down to it, we don't want to be that type of person to our bosses. Resolve what you can, own it, get it done. That's not to say that there's not going to be multiple times where we need additional input, additional direction, additional resources, additional help, and that's okay to ask for. But if it's something that you can handle, you should get it done, as opposed to give it to your boss. And many of these things I'm talking about, just kind of put it in a larger perspective, what they do over time is build credibility, so that when you go to your boss, or your bosses come to you with problems or questions, they have a trust that they know that you're not coming to them. You're coming to them because it's necessary, not because you're just trying to get out of work or have them resolve an issue for you. And so a lot of these things build long-term credibility, in my opinion. And then the follow-up, again, all back to ownership. Many times you'll have to give something to your boss and then await further direction. I'm sure everyone on this call probably has a couple of those things right now in their inbox. I have a couple really big ones myself, and I'm waiting for direction from multiple people. But just because I've given it to those people, I'm not going to assume that I'm off the hook until they get back to me. I'm going to, give it the appropriate amount of time, and I'm going to follow up, and I'm going to make sure that these projects keep moving forward so that I don't delay them in case, because everyone's busy, and I doubt many people will intentionally delay a project, but if they have a bunch of priorities, my priority is not always their priority. So I want to make sure that I follow up on it and try to get it done. So with that, I'm going to try to transition into, some tips and things that have helped me when working with other departments. Many of the same principles will apply. Obviously, when it comes to communication and all of these different things, when you're working with other departments, you want to make sure that you foster good communication. You're clear and concise with them, and you're helping them, most importantly, understand what you really need from them. And I'm only going back to it repeatedly because it happened this week. But with my presentation on home kitchens, immediately after the presentations, I had representatives from our fire department and land use come and discuss it with me. And we're taking future steps. But what I realized is they kind of came up and some of the questions they were asking, it made me realize on my part, I didn't do a good enough job of helping them understand what their role would be and what and how this would impact them. It seems easy. We sent them some information, but again, they have lots of priorities like putting out fires. They're not really probably going to jump right on something, some law that environmental health is sending them. So it was a key learning experience for me this week that when it comes to those things where we partner with multiple agencies, again, going back to the ownership thing, I should have actually made multiple calls and followed up and said, hey, Chief, do you have any more questions? Do you kind of, can I explain to you what I view this impact is to you? And then you can, obviously, you'll be the one to determine, how it really impacts you. But it was a good opportunity for me to have done a little bit more to facilitate a better working relationship with a couple of my county partners. So with that, these are things I tried to do prior to having, when I say having to work with another department, these are things that, there's not a direct initiative, there's not a direct problem, there's not a direct goal. I try to establish relationships. It's a little bit harder in the time of COVID since you can't physically see people, but I would regularly take an opportunity when we had to have meetings in these other departments or set up a time to just go chat with people from other organizations, especially those that we interact with regularly. We interact with land use regularly. We interact with our, for us in San Bernardino County, hazmat is separate from environmental health, so we interact with them regularly. Trying to meet with people from those organizations and establish relationships prior to needing to reach out to them facilitates everything in the future. And I may be getting this wrong, but an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of treatment or something along those lines. With that, these relationships are comparable to the prevention. Having someone that you can reach out to in a different department when there's a need makes life so much easier. Identifying network opportunities, again, right now it's a little bit challenging, but fortunately there's a lot of them, at least throughout the year for us, whether it be CCDEH or CCDEH conferences. Internally we have opportunities to interact with other departments. So I try to take advantage of those whenever possible and help when able. This should go without saying, but unfortunately we've all worked with an organization that when it's your problem they don't want to talk to you, but when it's their problem it becomes your emergency, at least in their eyes. I try to foster good relationships by simply helping when another department or organization or another jurisdiction even needs help. I try to jump on that and take it as an opportunity. I don't view it as them putting work on my plate. I view it as an opportunity to establish an ongoing relationship. And if you're willing to help someone prior to you needing help, they will probably be way more likely to help you solve your problems when that time comes. And again, this is kind of the proactive approach. I try to identify common areas of overlap in future work. We all had, or I'm assuming all of us had to deal with the lamp. the wonderful thing for us in San Bernardino County is that not only do we have working relationships and with a lot of the people in our land use section, but we started bringing up this topic well in advance of actually needing to do it. So when the time came, it wasn't as much of a shock, and it was still challenging, but it made it a little bit less challenging, I think. And that goes for, this can go for anything from computer migrations. We as a county are transitioning or have transitioned to Acela. Environmental health hasn't, but we've already started that that process of finding overlap in ways to possibly mitigate some of the challenges when that time comes. And that is kind of along the same lines of working to improve both organizations and the service to the public. So I'm sure we're not alone in San Bernardino County, but when it comes to many of the areas that we focus on, whether it be restaurants or anything for that matter, the public may need to have, or probably does need to have interaction, not just with environmental health, but probably land use, probably fire, probably other entities throughout your organization. And we try at times when possible to figure out how to streamline that overall process. It makes us all better, and it definitely helps the people that we're trying to serve. So take advantage of those opportunities when you can. And again, what it goes back to is all of these different opportunities to work on specific things will help you build long-lasting relationships. So when working with other departments, programs, partners, sometimes that's by choice, sometimes it's by necessity. Sometimes things are thrown at us and it's basically like, hey, you're being voluntold to join this working group with these other departments to resolve this issue. This, again, you can Google this. This is, been referenced in many different formats and many different books. But when it comes down to it, kind of following this timeline really helps. And, some of it just happens by nature, but, setting some clear direction when getting into these groups, like in the forming phase, figuring out who's in charge, letting ego go. The fact of the matter is that if there's 5 departments working together, you can't have 5 people in charge. It just makes it chaotic. That doesn't mean anyone gets walked over or steamrolled or we value anyone's opinion less, but setting guidelines and expectations, again, back to expectations early, helps this process immensely. Being able to say like, okay, environmental health is going to be the lead on this, and Freddie, we're going to go to you. You're going to be the one that communicates up and down, back to us, up to management, what we're doing, and then expectations back down to us. And one other key area I want to point out on here is I've found sometimes is the adjourning. Sometimes it just takes, it's kind of like the race is over and we're all standing there, but no one wants to go home. Don't be afraid at certain points to say like, okay, though I enjoy working with all of you, I feel like this initiative is kind of run its course and we're not finding a great amount of value in this. Can we move on to the next thing? Because I think we're all nice people, and many people are afraid to kind of just say, hey, maybe it's time to move on to the next initiative and stop having these meetings, because we're all limited for time, and being able to put a bow on things and wrap it up is also a key. When addressing specific issues, try to find the common ground. I think that goes without saying. Some of these things probably apply to just about every aspect of life, but finding common ground, attack the problem, not each other. I think it's easy at times to walk into a room when there's something very challenging, and immediately you find a bunch of finger pointing. One department feels it's another department's issue, and when it comes down to it, I view it as whether it's my problem or whether it's my fault, my department's fault or not. I've been tasked with resolving these issues, so let's get on it and resolve it. Don't assign blame. Again, something's usually always someone or an organization's fault. That doesn't matter at that point. All that does is create bad blood, frustration, and make getting to the end much more difficult. This is another key one. Get direction when needed. It goes back to, again, over communication. Don't be afraid if you're in a group meeting or working with another department and you feel like things are just not going appropriately, or you're having a challenge finding how to get to the next step. Ask your boss or management for direction, and most importantly, come to a solution. I've been involved in too many work groups where it's a whole lot of debate, and it feels like every meeting is just another debate, another debate, another debate, another discussion. Eventually, you just have to start moving forward and resolving issues. So key takeaways: set and understand expectations. Communication would definitely fall under that. Be flexible, solve problems. Again, own them, make them yours. Get to the finish line. Get direction when needed. And if there's one key takeaway that that will probably help you throughout your career, is if you try to make your boss's job easier, your life will probably be a lot easier, and your relationships with agency management and other programs will probably be a lot better. With that, I do just want to throw out a plug. This is unsolicited, but CCDEH is probably one of the greatest organizations I've ever been involved in, and I want to highly encourage everyone on this call to stay as involved as possible. It truly is one of those things where you get way more out of it than you will put into it. So the fact that you're attending this, I appreciate. Hopefully you got something out of my presentation. But all these wonderful people on this call, in CCDH, I can't thank you enough for all the things you supported me with throughout my career. And if there's ever anything I could do for any of you, just feel free to give me a call.
All right, Josh. Thank you. Wow. Great presentation. Now is the time for people to go ahead and enter your questions in the Q&A. Until we get some, I've got a few questions, Josh, that came up. I'm curious about, you mentioned this little thing you deal with sometimes called politics. And I'm curious, sometimes board members don't like the fact that we enforce state laws. And I'm just wondering if you have any tips on how your communication style in dealing with that issue, like we're not being business friendly, things like that.
Yeah, so I think that's an excellent question. And I think we all deal with it. One thing that we've done here is that we've worked with our management to build a trust level, and in turn expanded that to our board of supervisors, where though they don't like the answer, we explain limitations, but we also try to figure out how to get as close to yes or to a different yes as possible. So yeah, many times a board member will call and say, I can't believe you're shutting this place down, you're charging this person this, or you're making them put in this piece of equipment. And it's like, okay, well, let me give them a call. We're going to talk it through with them. And a lot of times that willingness to reach back out to the operator or owner and discuss other solutions gives us gives us a little bit of a break. And then I think a lot of times what it also does is it gives us, for lack of a better term, the ammunition to come back and say, board member X, we understand the frustration and the challenges. Here's the state law. So they can't do what they're doing. We gave them these recommendations and they don't seem interested in doing those. If they have anything else, we're more than happy to work with them on it and evaluate it. But at this time, unfortunately, they can't do it the way they want it, but we're willing to work. Showing that willingness to work with them kind of takes it away. And I'll just be honest with you, sometimes you just have to grin and bear it. They're just not going to like it. Yeah.
So you kind of, it sounds like, use the we language, like, yeah, here's the state law. What are we going to do to solve that? Kind of like you bring that in. So it's a partnership, not necessarily always the regulatory role that you play.
Yes, sir. That's a great summary.
Okay. On the accountability, I really appreciate you going through that. As a manager, I used to spend a lot of time with how to manage expectations. And one of the things that was maybe the most frustrating thing for me is having my boss or my elected officials have expectations around an issue where I don't have the resources to meet their expectations. And I'm wondering if you've come across that and how you align their expectations with your resources.
Yeah, I think we all come across that. It's a very challenging situation. And, as I've moved out of environmental health, I'm sure this isn't shocking to anyone, but yeah, it's applicable everywhere. And what I try to do, and it doesn't work every time, but I try to paint that picture very, very clearly and ask for them to help me prioritize. For example, again, it kind of goes back to the finding a yes. It may not be the yes, but finding a yes is we would like you to do this thing, and we don't have enough resources. So I can go back and say, okay, here's how much of it we can do currently. Here's some things we can stop doing to allow us the resources to do it. Or third, which usually is like, a really quick no, but or we would need to bring in more resources to do all these things. I shouldn't say it's always a quick no,
Yeah.
but and then what I try to do to make sure, again, to set that alignment with my boss and their bosses is that I say, so just so we're all clear, if we do all of this, we can't do this, or if we do what we're currently doing, we can only do this much of this. And then I know I preached, I don't try to give my boss's work, but I feel like that is kind of my boss's and the other management's job, is to help me prioritize what to do with my resources. So
Cool.
Again, that open communication helps a lot.
I know I used to have a list of like expectations and priorities, and I even talked with my board periodically about them, and they kept wanting to have like 10 number one priorities. 1A, 1B, everything was a number one priority. And it's like, that's a very hard conversation for you as a manager to have with your elected officials, but it's so important that it's an honest, upfront conversation so that everyone is having that understanding. Okay, I understand you can't do all the things and you are going to focus on this. And that's so critical. So I'm happy to hear that you're doing that.
I tell my boss, if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. So
yeah.
you have to help me, you have to help me understand what to do.
How about, Josh, do you have any recommendation on any other training that you can refer people to, or books, resources? You alluded to a couple. I actually went and ordered one of them while you were talking. Any other resources or tips you can put out there for people?
As far as trainings, I think I would honestly say take advantage of as many as you can. As far as, other books, one I'm reading right now, it's kind of focused on the healthcare industry, but it's Straight A Leadership is another really good one. It focuses on, it's very, it's not convoluted, it's very easy read, and it focuses on, the 3 A's, with the first being, alignment, alignment and then accountability. And, it goes into a number of these things, and it gives a lot of great tips on how to facilitate making sure that your whole organization is in alignment. And one tip I will give to everyone that's on here, where I've gained, probably the most amount of knowledge in my entire career, was not to knock any other regions, but being part of Region 4, I was very privileged to have a lot of great directors that I was able to work with, a lot of great members of CCDEH, whether it be on the different TACs or the different committees. Just say yes when an opportunity comes up, or there's an availability of anyone in this group. Take advantage of it, because they will probably be able to teach you something. And reaching out to people like Jeff and other people who've been through this for a while, you can learn so much from resources that are probably very easy to get access to if you just ask.
Yeah, what a great tip and point. I know back in the days when we used to carpool to meetings together, region meetings, I used to carpool when I was Nevada County Environmental Health Director with the Placer County Environmental Health Director to our Region 1 meetings. And man, the time that I got to spend with him and the things he taught me, and it was just an incredible resource. And so this CCDH network that you talk about is so invaluable, and people need to take advantage of that and get involved. I think the last question I would ask you is about back on accountability. Like, how do you as a manager, how do you manage your managers and supervisors and have clear expectations? Do you have any tools or forms, processes, like outside of just the normal evaluation process? Do you have any ways that you maintain a clear set of expectations and priorities with them?
Yeah, so the first is, and Jennifer Osorio could share a lot of these with you. We have performance plans. So what I do is the performance plan addresses a lot of the general stuff, and it's designed to go all the way up and down, from my level all the way down to our office assistants, and it addresses a lot of the more general stuff like timeliness, dress code, this and that. But then I have a section particularly for my managers where I have them fill out what they think their duties are, and then I review it and I add what the expectations are. And then the key for me is what's very helpful for me is I keep a running list of what we're working on, and those priorities change quite a bit, and I meet with my staff regularly. In an ideal world, prior to the COVID and craziness, sometimes as often as once a week. I mean, we talk almost every day, but the communication piece, and most importantly, just for me, is that I make sure as soon as I receive some sort of direction or change, I make sure I communicate that to them right away. We both kind of agree, whether it be verbally or in writing via email, saying, hey, Tim, I got direction today. We're going to stop doing this. We're going to start doing this. I want to make sure we're on the same page. Let me know what I can do to help you. And then that way I can follow up on it. They know I'm looking for it, and then I can follow up and it won't be a surprise to them.
Wow. Very cool. Maybe that's a form that we could get from you that you use and we can post it on the CCDH website.
Yeah. I'll ask Jennifer to send it to you.
Okay.
She has one specifically for environmental health. Mine's a little broader, but I'll have her send the environmental health one to you.
All right. Fantastic. Well, thank you. Josh, Jeff, do you want to wrap us up here?
I just wanted to thank Josh for his time. Great presentation. Great kickoff to our 2021 training series. And again, looking forward to the next session.